back. Last episode, we talked with Tamara's son, Jonathan, who was actually not on camera. He decided to be kind of off to the side. So if you watched our last episode, you didn't get to actually meet him, but we did have a fun discussion with him.
He was there.
He was there. We got to talk about, his journey through ABA to graduation. Even though he said it was horrible, and if you listen to it, you'll understand. Now we're going to talk to Tamara about being a mom through diagnosis and the ABA process. So, Tamara, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, about me. Sorry. So not about my kid.
Not yet.
We got to know about you first. Yeah. So I'm a mom of two. I have a daughter who's 21 and my son who's 13. My son is diagnosed on the spectrum with ADHD and suspected dyslexia. My autistic, or my what do I call him? My awesome trifecta. I call him my awesome trifecta. I also am a full-time faculty member at a local university, and my background is in psychology, which was very interesting to experience an autism diagnosis, to experience ABA in my home, as compared to reading about it in textbooks and teaching about it in a classroom. So that's been very cool. Yeah, I mean, what else should I say? Like, I like long walks on the beach.
I mean, do you enjoy long walks on the beach?
I mean, I really love a long walk on the beach. Yeah.
What are some of your hobbies and interests outside of work?
Yeah, I love to cook. I love to bake. I have a fresh loaf of sourdough bread that is rising on my counter right now. Very excited about that. I do a lot of that. I think you guys probably remember that too. I feel like whenever you were in my house, I was like there in the kitchen doing my things, which is really fun. I'm an avid reader. I love reading. And yeah, just, hanging out, being with people and friends and socializing and just trying to enjoy life as much as possible.
I have a two-parter for you. When was Jonathan diagnosed and how did that impact your family?
Okay, so he was 7 when he was diagnosed. And Jonathan has always been a kid who walks to the beat of his own drum. And his drum doesn't like to march in and out of the door, doesn't like to transition from one task to another, has a really hard time sleeping, wants nothing to do with food, hates every piece of clothing, all the shoes, the jackets, hates water, all the things, right? And he was such a sweet, sweet little boy. He was funny and kind and gentle. And then things started to shift. More frustration, more discomfort, more inability to communicate about certain things that were happening. So it really wasn't until he got older that the gap between what you would expect and what you were seeing started to become visible. And he had a really difficult fall when he was, fall as in autumn, when he was 6 years old. And there was a lot of emotional upset there. And we sought counseling right away for him. And the counselor kept saying to me, I feel like you should have a full eval done, maybe call the school. And she told me after the fact, when his diagnosis was in, because she was an LPC, I knew he had autism the minute I saw him, but I'm not licensed to say that. So she kept every week would be like, have you heard from the school? Have you heard from the school? So we went through the process. We had all of that done. And then he was diagnosed that February, the month before he turned 7. And I think I tell you that background because that kind of evolution into what's going on? Why are things different? Why is it getting harder and harder? And I don't understand why we can't help. And just that is so overwhelming to know that something's wrong, to not have the words to be able to explain what it is and to not be able to resolve it, which I think is what people with autism experience all day, every day, was overwhelming, and it impacted our family incredibly. It was really hard to have an older child who was a child and who needed your attention and your care, but yet you're talking to them about this very adult kind of thing, right? And asking of them to behave in a very adult kind of way around a really mature situation. that's hard. There's all kinds of guilt and difficulty with that. The time that it took, I was so grateful that I had the job that I had because I could just scoop him up and take him with me. He was at a private school and I knew the teacher really, really well. I would say she was almost like a family friend. We had known her for a lot of years. She had taught my daughter, and she used to tell me, it's okay. You get him here and I'm going to keep him right here. And she literally would just keep him right there until we could figure out what was going on and what was happening. There were a lot of sleepless nights or very little amounts of sleep, because even when he would finally calm down and go to sleep, now it was like a war zone in the house from the day, right? And trying to get everything else done. It was stressful. It was really hard. It was grueling, relentless, unforgiving. It was really challenging.
So then after like diagnosis and, you know, looking into different therapies and different ways to help him, how did you land on ABA?
Yeah, good question. So got the diagnosis, and honestly, when I first got the diagnosis, I was like, autism? I don't think he has autism. Like, it just didn't fit, you know, in my mind at that moment. And I'm not naive to autism, you know, it's part of my professional life. It's something I know about. I lecture on, and I lecture mostly on, I should say, ABA, because it's the behaviorism, right? The application of that's what I was actually teaching. So it just, I was like, wait, what? So I started reading, right? Grabbing books that were meant for parents, not the academic ones, really looking at the different large national organizations and what they have to say. And it was something I read in a book, and I don't know what it was, but all of a sudden it was like his whole life flashed before my eyes in this completely different lens. And I was like, oh my God, my son has autism. How did I not see, you know? And so then I really was like, okay, what do I do? What do I need to do? And one of the national organizations has a mentoring program. So I put my name in, and a woman called me back and she said, let's have coffee. I'll be your mentor. Let's have coffee. So we met for coffee, and she said, okay, do you have a notebook? And I said, yeah. And I pulled out my notebook. She's like, all right, here we go. Here's what you're going to do.
Wow.
First thing she told me to do was, you're going to apply for Medicaid. Here's where you go. Here's what you're going to put in. Here's how it works. Second thing you're going to do is you're going to look into ABA. And I said, what the, like, why, where, how? And so she told me about her experience with her daughter. She gave me the name of 2 places. She told me the place that she was at. And I was like, okay. And I could just see that, like, she had a process. She had a system for helping her child, for making progress with her child. And I just put my faith in it. I don't know, it just felt right. So I contacted the places, got a call back from the company that we ended up going with, and they were very helpful. Went in for the eval, and I was so nervous because there's a lot of masking. And so, and I was also experiencing with some of the other family dynamics, a lot of people telling me, he does not have autism. It's you. You're a bad parent. You need to do better. That's where these behaviors are coming from, you know? So I was having all of that piece wrapped up in it. And I was thinking, like, oh my God, this woman's never going to believe me. So I brought all my notes, because I had like all my notes, and I was like documenting all his behaviors and everything that was happening. They gave me the intake form, so they're in the room, and he's like a perfect angel. And I'm sitting there like filling out the form and giving examples, and like, he'll do this on that day and this on that. And it was that paperwork that they said helped to identify what exactly was going on with him and how ABA could help him, and that he needed help like really soon, very quickly, and to get in there and bumped him up to get those services. So that, I can't even remember the question, but that was how we found ABA and how we got started.
So kind of follow up with that then, did you hear any negatives about ABA, like in your process of looking?
Yeah, so not in my process of looking, but I had a student, because I was at the time a faculty for undergraduate psychology students, right, at a traditional undergraduate institution. One of my beloved students, who I loved so much, actually got a full ride at a local university to get a degree around ABA. That was a doctoral level degree. And she was going to be working in the lab with these research projects they were doing. And she started, and 2 weeks later she left. She walked out and she left. because of the way that the research was being run, kind of like the systematic, like you bring them in, you put them here, and this is the protocol, follow the protocol, follow the protocol, follow the protocol. And there was no, like she said, she was like, there was no humanity. Like these kids were sick, these kids were crying, these kids needed things. She was like, it was going beyond the point. And we had a really good conversation about that. And then I did start to look into it a little bit to see that there are still some folks who are using it in a very unhuman, humanistic way. Yeah.
So what was the reason for switching from private school to homeschooling?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So he was at this private school for 2 years of kindergarten, but the kindergarten is not like a typical kindergarten. It's called non-academic. And it was actually outdoors. It was called a forest program. So he was outside all day, every day. Outside is his element. He actually does really well. When he is upset, he doesn't want to leave the house, but the minute you get him in an outside space, and he was even like that as a baby. So I was like, this is going to be awesome for him. So I had him in there, and then he transitioned into the first grade. And that was that year where he had a really difficult fall, autumn season. And that teacher was really strong, and I think she was able to really support and help him. Over the summer, we started ABA, and they were willing to come and to help and to support in the classroom. But before we really got that in place and happening, the school just felt like we're not helping this kid. For example, so he's in second grade now, and he can only identify 13 letters between all the capital and lowercase, right? Like, so like something like it just wasn't working. So we knew we needed to do something. And I was looking at the other private schools, applied to some. Always lovely to get that letter. Thank you so much for your interest after you've talked to all these people and done all this paperwork and spilled your guts and told them all these personal things about your kid and sent them all the reports. Thank you so much for your interest, but we do not accept children with autism. Thank you. So that happened. And then I was just sitting and talking with my partner at the time. And I said, he really needs this. And like, we could see in our head what he needed. And it just made sense. Like, we should just bring him home. We should just set it up in the basement and just do it. We know what he needs. We know what's going to help. We have the professionals here that can do it. And so I looked at the law and made sure we aligned with what the requirements for Pennsylvania was. And I'm lucky that he's a special ed kiddo, right? Because of his diagnosis. And there's an extra step where you have to have people who are certified who can write the letter to say, yes, they're doing what he needs and providing what he needs. And because I work at a university and I know all these people, they were able to weigh in and give me advice and say, yep, you got it, and write my letter. And that's what we did. Yeah. So it wasn't like traditional homeschool. I think sometimes when people think like, oh, you're homeschooling him, they think I have like a schedule on the wall. And like, finally, I'm giving this child some discipline. Oh my God.
That is definitely not how homeschooling went with him.
No, right? Not at all. So we set up a space downstairs to kind of look like this is the school space to make sure there were parameters around that. But I tell people, like, if the skill was when the teacher says, write your name on the sheet, that's the only thing we work on today, then that's the only thing we work on today. And I don't care if you break 100 pencils and throw them across the room. She knows. I don't care.
We went through a lot of pencils some
Yes,
days.
Remember, I bought the bulk boxes, and then you bring
we had to hide. Like, we only could bring out a certain amount per day because they really all would have been broken.
Yeah, exactly. And so we just started at the basics and slowly worked our way up. And
we used a lot of token economies, a lot of whiteboards. I feel like we came up with like different, I remember, I will never forget, we had like a snowball fight. I put that in quotation marks for those just listening. I think it was like, I literally bought like stuffing from like AC Moore, and that's what we worked for that day. That's all he wanted to do. He wanted to have a snowball fight. So listen, these are the things we need to get done, and then you can earn your snowball fight. It was a lot of token economy type of energy that did work for him. But as you just said, like, there were some days that just getting through one math sheet, like, that was an accomplishment because it took all day long to, get that math sheet done. A lot of refusal, a lot of running upstairs, running back downstairs. But we got it done at the end of the day. And if that's all that we got it done. That was all that mattered.
Yeah. And I feel so lucky that we were able to do that, because I did meet with the public school, and the director of special ed even said to me, like, come, I'll take you around the school. I'll show you everything. And there were just so many things that I felt like, you don't understand. This isn't going to work for my kid. Like, I'm not saying you don't have a good system. I'm not saying that it doesn't work for some kids, but this isn't going to work for my kid, you know? First things first, walking in the building, they have this beautiful high ceiling with all this glass and the sun shining in, and it's very open, and they have these long, like half cabinets full of books and little spots where you can snuggle and read. It's beautiful. And I think the neurotypical kids love it. And my son would have been tortured, as he would have said, in a space like that, with the echoing, with the changes in the light, with the changes in the temperature, with all of the stuff all over the, like, that's not going to work for him. Just, you know, he needed something different. He didn't need someone who was, because as the school told me, like, it's all, I said, what happens if he has an outburst and he like throws a chair across the room? She said, well, we're going to pick up the phone and call someone, and it's compliance, compliance, compliance. And I was like, thank you. Have a good day. That's not what my kid needs. My kid needs one.
Because the second he would throw his wiggle stool, I will never forget it. He had a wiggle stool.
Wobbly stool. Yeah.
And he'd throw it and we'd sit there. I remember his VCBA and his RBT at that point did a lot of, you know, I wasn't in ABA yet, so they did a lot of coaching for me and did a lot of extinction as well. They told me, I will never forget, they told me, go on your phone and scroll Facebook when he's doing this. And I was like, what? I'm supposed to do what while he's throwing chairs? And they were like, scroll Facebook, don't look at him. And I was like, okay. And the first time it worked, I was like, oh, this is what they're talking about. This is extinction, and it worked.
Yeah. And you can see how complicated that gets, right? Because, and I suspect you guys probably run into this with parents, you know, me as a parent, I run into it with friends and family where they're like, why are you not disciplining your child? And it's like, you want to try? Go ahead. Let me turn my camera on. Get out of here. No, do not engage. Don't pick it up. Don't get in the loop. Do not engage. And, you know, we know it's reinforcement. Like, you just have to sit back and be like, whatever, bud, that's not going to work for me, you know, and just ignore it. And it's so hard. It feels
when
so
you're done, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, right. And then when it's done, we can talk about it. Yeah. But that's how it works. That's what he needed. And you know, he wasn't going to get that. So the homeschooling worked. And it worked so fast. In 6 months, he was reading Jack and Annie chapter books. You know, he would not be where he is today if he had been in a different environment. He just wouldn't be there.
So you went, you know, you took him out of private school, put him into homeschooling, and then he went back. So was it difficult to get him back into private school after you were homeschooling?
Yeah, because transition is the worst for him, right? So he was apprehensive, but I feel like we had a very good transition plan for him. We talked to him about it a lot. We actually used it as like a motivator, as a reinforcer for him, because he was starting to get to that point of like, I hate homeschooling with you people. And we were like, all right, well, you want to go back to school? This is what we need to accomplish to get back to school.
Didn't he have, like, it was almost like a board game map that was like, these are the things we have to accomplish?
A toolbox.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, a toolbox.
Yes.
Yep. And we printed out a toolbox, and then we printed out little pictures to like represent the various skills or goals that he had to do. And when he would meet it, we would put it in the toolbox, and we had to fill the toolbox with all of the things. Yep. That's what we did. And it got a little complicated because COVID, right? So I think we would have probably transitioned him sooner. But COVID happened. So then they were virtual schooling, and then I got sick, and it just felt like keeping his, you know, not changing anything and just keeping it steady for him during that time was probably the best to do. So we waited until that was kind of at a different stage and I was recovering for him to be able to go back to school.
It's actually like a great transition kind of into our next question. I know that you were just saying how you got sick. So while battling illness, like what was it like still trying to take care of, you know, a child with autism?
Yeah. Well, I had a lot of help. I think that's really important. Creating, you know, that hive, the group of people who are going to support you and help you. But also having a really solid rhythm or routine in place, right? And it feels like, what do you call it? Groundhog Day, right? Because you're doing the same thing with your kid every day. And I know it's always tempting for me as a parent to be like, you know, let's do something different. Let's like go here for dinner, or let's go, like, that's what I want to do, but that's not what he wants to do. And that's not going to help him. So having that in place and having become really comfortable with that kind of redundancy for him, I think that helped me because I had it down pat. Right? It helped my partner because he had it down pat. Like we just knew what we needed to do to keep him okay. And then any kind of decisions, like when I needed to go for my chemo treatment, it was like, okay, well, I know that this is his routine. So where can I put that so that his routine doesn't get interrupted and doesn't change? You know, it was hard. So at night I would read to him. But I was really sick for a period of time after my treatments. And so I couldn't really get out of bed. And so I would say, come on, bud, come get in bed with mom. And he would like climb in with me. And I was like, we're still going to read. We're just in a different room, you know? And that's how we would do it. So just trying to keep my eye on that was helpful. And, you know, it was comforting to me to also have that rhythm and routine during that time. I think it's good for all of us to have in our lives. It was also a really eye-opening time for me because I had a lot of things from the chemo made me very, very sick. And so my sense of smell was really messed up. Everything smelled overwhelming. It was really very uncomfortable. I couldn't eat anything. Everything I tried to eat was like, oh God, get it away from me. Like I just couldn't tolerate it. I couldn't explain to you why. But then people would say, well, what do you want? And be like, I don't know, right? Or I would gravitate towards things that I couldn't actually eat, or if I ate too much of would make me sick. Sleep was just wacky and weird and didn't feel right. And it was interesting to be so sensitive. Like my skin was so sensitive to everything. And I started to think to myself, my kid goes through this every day, right? And especially around the food stuff. I am now much more sensitive with him about that because it's like, oh, this is what he needs. This is how the smell, like, how can the smell overwhelm you so much that like, how, you know? But I'm like, oh, it can, you know? It was an interesting time, a very interesting time for me.
That's really interesting that you were able to, I mean, obviously you didn't want to be in those shoes, but you were able to kind of put yourself in his shoes. And like, you're right. Like, I don't know if I would be able to experience that. Like, you don't really understand it until you go through it yourself. So
Yeah.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a question on here, but I have a question that's not on there. So, when it comes to ABA, nope, it's gone. It literally left my brain.
Yeah. It's okay.
Okay.
It happens.
Well, I'm just
Well,
gonna move on.
ask the last question. If it comes back, you can
Yeah.
This
throw
is
it in there.
great. Oh no, I remember now. Okay, so Jonathan graduated ABI recently, right? So how long ago would you say that was?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. So he didn't have an RBT in there with him in 7th grade at all. He had someone in there with him in 6th grade, but only in the beginning of the year. I think we like transitioned him into the school year, and then the RBT kind of left. The RBT did leave, and then the BCBA came in, I think once a week, and then like once every other week just to check in, but he was no longer getting like one-on-one support. So I guess that was in 6th grade. So timeline, we get our first ABA in the summer after 2nd grade, right? That's when it begins. They're with him through 3rd grade and 4th grade and 5th grade into 6th grade. And then 6th grade, he's flying solo and thriving and doing really well. And by doing very well, like, and having all the struggles you expect him to have, right? And being able to struggle through and find the other side of it. And then was so that was kind of his stopping point. Yeah. But I am still connected with our BCBA to kind of just support me and keep in touch with me as we kind of move into some new territory.
That was going to be my follow-up is like, are you like, do you feel like graduation was the most appropriate thing at that moment? Or do you feel like you might need to go back, or just like the parent consult, like being in touch with the BCBA is just helpful enough?
Yeah, no, I think I feel really good about it. I know that when the topic first came up, I was like, no, don't even. And the BCBA was like, no, 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 no. I'm not saying now. I'm just saying like I'm always thinking long term and making sure what we're doing today is going to be helpful for the next pieces. And I'm like, please don't leave me. I'm not ready. But by the time we had the conversation, like we didn't even need to have a conversation. It was like, oh my God, this kid is so ready. Like, look at him go. Like, this is amazing. So I feel really good about that. I think the thing I miss the most is having other people around who get it. Get talked to about it, like the last episode with him and his behavior. Like, a lot of people don't get that. They're like, why is your kid talking like? And it's like, that's his world. That's who he is, and he's allowed to be who he is, but he just needs to know when he does have to interact with a different world in a different way, can he do it? And he can, but he's at home. Like, he's got to be who he is.
And honestly, he did great. That is him. That is his personality through and through. I would not expect anything less than what he just gave us in like the last episode. That is pure Jonathan personality.
Yep.
And the fact that he was joking about taking the wall from our old clinic.
That is him.
I love his sense of humor is the best.
It's still there. It's 100% authentic Jonathan, and he can't ever change. If he changes, then I'm gonna be really concerned.
Yeah. No, yeah, he's a funny guy. It's good. It's really good to see. It's nice. I mean, there's been so many days where my kid did not smile. So if his humor is different, I don't care. He has it. Like, what a gift,
And he thinks he's funny, and that's the best part. He just thought that was hilarious.
Like, and you can hear the wind up too, like the
Yeah.
When he's like, I'm gonna come out with something that's hysterical. I think this is funny. It's happening up here. It's coming out.
That's right. Yeah. You could see it on his face. I know he wasn't on camera, but you could see it. Like, his eyes light up and he gets this, side.
I feel like I couldn't see it, even though he wasn't on camera. I can picture.
Yeah, like you can hear him smiling through, like, like because we know him, so like we know when he's serious and when he's not, and like we know like you can hear the smile behind his words.
Yep.
Okay, we have one last question for you. We asked Jonathan and got his recommendation. But we want to hear from you too. Would you recommend ABA to others?
Absolutely. And I have many, many times. I've also encouraged a lot of students to go this route, that this is really meaningful work, and I've watched your podcast, it's hard work. That's definitely the message. And I love that you guys have this platform to talk with other folks in the field and going into the field. It saved my son's life. Like, what other recommendation do you want? I mean, when he was, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to be emotional.
Well, yeah, you said that and I'm
crying.
Oh, there's plenty of tears. What are you talking about?
When he was having that difficult time, in second grade, and we were working through, there was a moment where I thought to myself, like, I can't do this. Like, my kid's gonna have to go in the hospital, and I had a conversation with the doctor, and the doctor said, like, at this point with medication, all we can do is really sedate him to a point that, like, it just suppresses the behavior. And like, how gut-wrenching that was. Like, but this is my baby. This is my little boy. And you all saved his life. So yeah, I would absolutely recommend ABA. It's hard. It feels very counterintuitive. It's exhausting and relentless, and it works, and it's worth it. So thank you for all that you have done for him.
And now he's crushing it, and he's in
Oh.
7th grade, and oh gosh, he's gonna go to high school. I don't know if anyone's ready for that. I don't think any of us are.
No.
I'm glad I'm many states away from when he gets his driver's license. I definitely don't want to be up in that area from 18.
Yeah, can you let us know if we're getting a driver's license? I need to make sure I stay away from that area of.
I will
the
let you know.
world.
He's excited about that. He
Let's put
had
a
a
GPS
comment
on.
about it. Yeah,
Yeah,
he,
I need
like,
to know
you're-
what car he's driving. I need to. I
Right.
need to know. I am still the one closest to
You
your
are.
area, and
Mhm.
I need to make sure that I'm, because I really think that he'd try and run me off the road. I do. I do. I think after, if anything just taught us in this last episode that obviously I was awful. I was the worst.
The worst. Yeah, yeah. At least
So-
you didn't get locked out of the house. You know, the person who was after you, he literally locked him. Do you remember this?
I locked
Long
myself out.
hallway. Yeah.
I
And
locked
it was like,
myself out, and he did let me back in.
that's
So
good.
I will take
Win
that.
then. Mhm.
Yeah.
He locked him out, and he was on one side of the door, and the RBT was on the other side of the door. It was a glass door, and I was standing there.
But you guys had the code with the key.
We did have the code with the key. I don't know if this RBT had the code with the key though.
Okay, that's fair.
Right?
I think that Jonathan knew that I
You knew, right?
into the
Yeah.
house. I
Yeah.
had access to that. So
Yeah. It
I
was
think
quite a moment.
different.
I was like, what do I do? Like, do I intervene? Do I not, like, because they were in the middle of this refusal behavior and the RBT was like working through it. And I was like, if I jump in, then I ruin all that work that he just did with him. But at the same time, I was standing here going, what child just locked the adult in the house? What do we do? You know? But they came through. They came through.
I also
Yeah.
will never forget. I have a had my other kiddo just graduated as well. I had a kiddo at my current company that was, him and Jonathan would be best friends. They are so similar in so many different, they're just so similar. When I got onto this case, I was like, yeah, I know how to deal with you. Yeah, we're gonna do this. We're gonna get through it. And all I could think about was Jonathan going through a very big extinction burst and trying to slam me out of his bedroom. And I remember it was hot out, but I remember wearing Timberlands because I could put my foot in between his door so that he could not slam it. And I could have at least that little bit of a barrier that he wouldn't be able to. And I think it went on for about 2 hours of him, you're the worst, you're the worst, you're the worst, you're the worst. And I remember the BCBA looking at me and the RBT looking at me, and the RBT was like, should I step in? And the BCBA was like, no, she's fine. Just let it go. And in that moment, I was like, okay, I got this. I can handle this. And I was like, why didn't the RBT step in? This was awful.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But these are the things that I remember about my time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
With Mr. Jonathan. And I actually have sitting right here is, first of all, you're the best. Second of all, I will miss you.
Oh my God, I love it so much. He used to say this. So his refusal
First of all,
we start with, first of all, second of all.
But yes.
Oh my God, that's so.
And now we've come full circle. He's done ABA and just living his best life.
He's doing great. I mean, he is done, but at the same time, he's not, because that's what I use every day. That's how I'm raising my kid,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's done dealing with the outsiders coming in.
Exactly. Yeah. But he's doing well.
I also feel like it really helps the fact that, like, not only is he putting all the work in, but Tamara, like, you have to give yourself credit too, because you have put also so much work in. Like, we talk to parents every day, day in, day out, and I mean, I'm very lucky to have a good group of families that will work with me and, take my strategies and, all that and run with them and do the trial and error. Oh, that didn't work that time. We'll try something different. But like, you're on that list of people, right? Like, you're on that list of people that we have worked with that have taken our strategies, have run with them, have believed in us enough to be like, okay, yes, like, it sounds so like abstract or like so simple sometimes, like the first then strategy, right? Like super simple, super, really would that work? And then it works, right? Like, especially for a kid like Jonathan, all right, like just like before when we had him on, like we said, all right, first come talk to us about a couple questions and then you can go play or sleep or whatever.
And also giving him like the choices. Like, again, I think people like kind of overlook how simple that is, but we gave him choices. I don't know if that's on the recording or not, but like giving him like, you can pass, you don't have to answer our questions, and you can tell us you're done when you want to be done. And we got through all of it. He didn't, I think he passed one question. Like he
tried to.
He did.
He tried to pass.
But yeah, like he got through it. So yeah, as Erica said, like, the parents' support and the parents also putting in the work. And as you said, you're still using ABA, but like now you guys, you don't need that extra people in your house. Like you guys are able to do it all by yourself. And to that, yeah,
that's it.
Sam, you want to take it away?
Yeah, I'll wrap it up. Thank you, Tamara, for talking with us and having Jonathan say his piece. And it was really nice to see you guys again. And I just love to hear, how you guys are doing. If anyone, whoever's listening, if you want to be on one of our episodes, or if you have any questions or feedback for us, you can email us at aba.generalized.podcast@gmail.com. We are on Instagram at ABA Generalized the Pod. Our YouTube channel is ABA Generalized. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Great
job! And you did it! And not fired anymore.
And
pressure was on.
ABA Generalized, the podcast, is not providing professional advice. Please seek a professional in your area for specific advice and support.